The relationship between the required return and risk is called the security market line. And over here we have this graph that shows us the security market line. So on the horizontal axis we have risk as measured by beta, and on the vertical axis we have the required rate of return. Now over here you can see that as the risk on the stock is increasing, as you increase the beta coefficient, your required rate of return is going to increase each time. And if you look at the values, these are actually the same values that we have already calculated ourselves in example number 2. So over here the risk-free rate is 6%, and because it is a risk-free rate, the market risk over here is 0, so it has a beta coefficient of 0. Now as you can see that the beta increases, which means that the market risk, the volatility with the market starts to increase. So from 0 it goes to 0.5. The required rate of return goes from 6 to 8.5%. So there is a 2.5% risk premium over here. This difference measures your risk premium. And you can see as the beta is going to increase, the risk premium is going to increase with it, because the risk-free rate is fixed over here. This is your risk-free rate, it is 6%. Now when the beta is 1, at this point again the risk-free rate is 6%, but the market requires a return of 11%, so the premium has increased now. So the market risk premium is 5%, applies also to an average stock, and is the slope coefficient in the SML equation. We'll come back to the slope of the SML equation, that what does it tell us. And over here, once you have the beta coefficient of 2, over here the required rate of return is now 16%. So the market risk premium is now 10%. So the risk premium is going to be more for relatively more risky stocks. And this is what we have studied so far, that as risk increases, so should the return, so that there is equilibrium in the market. So over here, as your risk is increasing, as the beta coefficient is increasing, so is the required rate of return increasing as well. Now over here, another very important thing is the slope, which I said we will come back later. So the slope coefficient is very important over here, which is your market risk premium of 5%. So 5% is the slope over here. This is important because this tells you about the degree of risk aversion in the economy. And the greater the average investor's risk aversion, the steeper will be your security market line, and the greater will be the risk premium for all stocks. Hence, the higher the required rates of return on all stocks. Basically, this is telling you, this 5% is telling you that this is the economy's current risk aversion rate. So this is the requirement. So you have to pay them this much premium in order for them to purchase stocks, or else they would just prefer to make investment in bonds. Okay. And later on we will see that as risk aversion increases in the economy, what happens is that your SML becomes steeper. So the slope increases. When the slope increases, it means that your graph will become steeper. And when that is the case, then at each point a higher level of required rate will be needed. So we will discuss this later on once we're discussing the impact that risk aversion has, changes in risk aversion have on the SML. Right now what you need to understand is that the slope, which is your market risk premium, okay, I wanted to erase this actually, yeah, that the slope, which is your market risk premium, tells you about the degree of risk aversion in the economy. Now, both the SML and a company's position on it change over time due to changes in interest rates, investors' risk aversion, individual companies' betas, and so on. And some of these changes will be discussed later on.